Where is AI really in July of 2026? And what opportunity are investors missing with the technology? It may feel like it's already taken over based on headlines, but the reality is very few people are using it to its full capacity. Welcome to this week's edition of Storage Unlocked, brought to you by our friends at PB Brown General Contractors. I'm your host, Thaddeus Campbell. He is the co-founder of Terrakotta, Kusiima Boswell, on the front lines of AI innovation. Kusiima, first and foremost, hard for me to believe, but it's been almost a calendar year since your viral LinkedIn post that made me schedule a meeting and meet you. It's hard to believe that was last summer. What has your year been like with Terrakotta and what you guys are doing with the AI dialer, the craziness that you guys have had? How's that been?
Yeah, so I know it's crazy. The time flies. It feels like other previous jobs, school classes and things are watching the clock, so time goes slow. This is like we're racing against it, so the time moves very fast, which has been fun. It's hard to believe that it's been 12 months because, if I zoom out, been a ton of updates that we made to Terrakotta. Uh just see the response and growth from last year to now has been pretty spectacular, beyond my wildest hopes and dreams for what I thought it was going to be. So, I always hoped, but it's really crazy when you actually see it start to unfold. In terms of things that we've been focused on, I think, yeah, mainly as far as product goes, we've just been working on improving like data access to high quality property information, ownership information, tenant information, just like really trying to get deeper in that to pair with the outreach tools that we've had.
Talk me through Terrakotta. You've been on my other podcast before, Stories Behind the Door. We got this. If anyone wants to hear Kusiima's story, it's incredible. Go watch that. This is certainly much more of a news-oriented podcast. Talk to me about what Terrakotta is. What's the software that you guys are building? What's the AI tool, I guess I should say, that you guys are building? And how does it help the people that are using it?
Yeah, so Terrakotta is an AI data and dialing platform specifically for commercial real estate. What that means is that we use AI to uncover really accurate and up-to-date, high-quality property owner and tenant contact information, as well as information about the building itself. And then we pair that with a number of outreach tools that are meant to streamline the process of getting in touch with those prospects. So it's the sort of the core function that we've got as far as those outreach tools go is a dialer phone system. It's like a super souped up office line basically. Can go into more of the details, but now we're starting to add things like email, LinkedIn tools as well. And so that's been really cool as well.
As I said, I scheduled, you did this LinkedIn. I can't even remember what your LinkedIn post said. I just remember it was one of the coolest LinkedIn posts I've ever seen for promoting a business. I got to go back and look at it because it hooked me in a second. I got my start in real estate flipping houses, and anyone who's ever flipped houses understands the pain of going and pulling lists to try and get owner information to market to people. The cost of that, get a CRM, then start dialing and actually make the phone calls to try and actually get properties. You guys put that all in one place. From the first moment I saw it, I couldn't believe the technology and what you guys were able to put together. And I'm not doing that anymore. Like, I don't spend my day making phone calls and going direct to property owners anymore. I have connected you to a bunch of people that I know that do that because I was blown away by it. Tell me what your feedback's been from the folks who are using the platform and what kind of response have you gotten to it?
Yeah, I love that question. So I'm pretty aggressive about like getting actual feedback from our users and telling them, please be brutally honest, like tell us what you want, tell us how we can make it better. I think the main piece of feedback that we've gotten actually hasn't been about the functionality of the system. It's mostly things like, hey, can you guys add this functionality? Can you add this feature? Can you add this capability? Like a concrete example of that is now we have email automation. So Terrakotta will take in all the context about the prospect, about the market. It'll spin that all up for you into an email. Now, what people want to be able to do is not just send that email to one contact that they get in touch with, but send that in mass, kind of do an e-blast type of thing. Similarly, we just launched a Claude integration. So now you can talk to your Terrakotta account and talk to all of our prospecting like you're talking with Claude. And that opens up like a whole Pandora's box of different functionality, and people want that connected to different tools and CRMs. So I think that's always like a sign that things are headed in the right direction, that we're working on stuff that people care about, is when it's like, oh yeah, this is great. Thanks for doing this. Like, can you do this, 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 and this now on top of that? And we're always like, yes, absolutely. But there's some prioritization, and it's tricky because we're a smaller team trying to do something fantastic, kind of punch above our weight. So yeah, I think the feedback's been good, but it's a lot of like more and deeper functionality and taking advantage of like this incredible new technology with LLMs that we have.
It's always nice, right? Because if somebody calls and says, "Hey, can you add this?" You know they're actively using your platform, which is right the best thing that you can ask for as you want somebody to stay involved. They tend not to keep using if they're not using the platform actively, they don't tend to stay as customers for very long. So those are the best kind of questions to get. Not, "Hey, fix this," but, "Hey, can you add this?"
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's kind of the way I look at it too. It's good. It's good when the users are kind of shaping the direction of what we're building, and there's a lot of interest. And I think that's a good way to go about building software.
So you talked about small team, a lot to do, trying to stay ahead of the curve. This is something that fascinates me right now with AI. It seems like even for me, and I'm an absolute amateur, right? No background in technology at all. Certainly didn't go to school for computer science or engineering or anything like that. I have an English and history degree, right? Maybe that's good for a large language model. Maybe that comes in handy. But the thing that fascinates me is the pace at which the AI tools themselves are improving. How do you guys, as a company that's selling a AI tool, manage that speed with which things are improving? It's got to be challenging to kind of stay on task.
Yeah, I think that is such a great question, and that kinda speaks to, like, sort of the undercurrent that I'm hearing when I talk to users or operators and different roles, like, it's just fast, it's happening very fast. If you look at 2017 was the year I graduated from high school, it's also the year that, like, a very fundamental or foundational paper on the fact that as you train these models more information, like, they get better, and they get better, like, exponentially. That was released 2017. I remember being a senior in college, starting to play around with transformer models. Like I was really into one called Roberta, which did not have the shelf life or trajectory that GPT had. But this is like, you can go on huggingface.com and like type in a prompt, ask it like to finish a recipe for you or something like that. In 2022, it's like you have this really powerful sort of chat GPT tool. And I think what's happened since then over the last 2 years is like the usability of these tools has gone up tremendously as far as like new functionality. Like you now have Claude Code, you have Claude Design. I don't know if you've tried asking it to build you like graphics, but it can build you graphics, like good animated graphics for different things. And so like
Been mind
the
blowing. I don't mean to interject, but
yeah, please. Yeah.
the difference between 6 months ago when I would ask it to design a graphic and today, like, I can remember just going absolutely nuts 6 months ago. I was trying to ask it to design something for me, and I was, like, 30 times in, and it was horrible. It was, like, complete garbage. I do it today, and quite frankly, we're building a whole brand, and the brand logo came out of my ChatGPT, and it's friggin' phenomenal. It's, like,
Yeah.
absolutely on point. So, anyway, I interjected
Yeah.
because that gets me excited. It just highlights the speed at which it's getting better because it was like I would have fired the marketing person 6 months ago to, "Holy goodness, I'll hire you for the rest of my life now." To make
Yeah.
that kind of improvement in that short of a time period is mind-blowing.
Yeah, and that's the thing that you're right, it is mind-blowing, and I think, like, there's 2 sides of it. Like, number 1 is, these models are being trained constantly updated, they're getting bigger, and they're getting more powerful, and you kinda see that on these benchmarks. So, like, anytime a new model releases, like, I'll go look at the benchmarks and see how big of an improvement is from the last model. So, I was, like, looking at that for Fable and Mythos, the new models from Anthropic, and like you see like a 4% bump, or I don't recall what it is, but it's not like massive in terms of like how it does in the agentic coding. But the thing that is really interesting is like in parallel you have all these developers that are working on making these tools like more useful and thinking about users and looking at how they're working with the products. So like 2022 comes, like we just have the underlying technology, but I think now what's happening is like these teams are growing, they're extremely well capitalized, they have extremely smart people working on these problems, and they care about users. They care about growth, and so they're shipping things that like move the needle and that are useful to people. But kind of the thing that's underneath it or thing that's been really interesting from a technical perspective that I think is cool is like all that stuff is mostly unlocked by improvements in agentic like coding. So programming is the way that stuff gets built, like just that we interact with on the computer, digitally products, tools, things like that. It's programming. And so as these models get really, 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 really good at programming, and luckily they have tons and tons of training data for programming, like it's gonna get faster and faster and faster. I think like the sky's kind of the limit, and it's a little bit like, man, if you're creative and willing to work with something, like you can build anything.
To your point earlier, right? Like you say, okay, they update to their next iteration and it's only 4% better. But the reality is that's happening in a matter of a week, right?
Yeah.
It's like they're going 6 months between those iterations, right? So 4% is not a lot, but 4% a week is like you're talking absolutely exponential over the course of a year at that point. So that speed is crazy to me. You mentioned something. I was lucky enough a couple weeks ago to have Christopher Taylor on. He is now the chief AI officer at a company, 10 Federal. That's a big third-party management and owner company in storage. They really started their company based on technology. They hired Chris to be their chief AI agent straight out of NVIDIA. And
Oh.
one of the things that I can't even remember where I was going with this question. I had a reason I was bringing them up and I just forgot what it was, which is not unusual for me. I'll remember why. I had a next question I wanted to ask you, which is
Mhm.
you have a little different background than a lot of folks. You grew up in Seattle. You went to a high school where you were able to get immersed in technology. You then, of course, come out here to Philadelphia, where I'm at with UPenn. At what point did Kusiima Boswell realize that AI wasn't just a tech trend, that it wasn't just something that people were talking about, but it was something that was going to be transformational?
Yeah, I think that so like AI and machine learning to me when I was in high school was like, yeah, if you wanted to build like a AI like chess bot, like that was the extent of like how I thought it was gonna be used. And then I was aware of like machine learning also in high school, like read some papers. Like I was interested in the Go thing, but I don't think it really clicked for anyone until like or like what the potential of it until you actually interact with like GPT. And like I mentioned, I was using this other transformer model for this, senior project that I was working on, predicting stock market directions, which is like a whole nother conversation. But like that model was cool and it helped us and we were able to like train the model to accomplish an objective. But I remember like the first time that actually the part like the really smart technical engineering student that I was working on that project with showed me like GPT and I was like, "Whoa, this is incredible." But it still didn't click to me like the potential of what it could be. I think when ChatGPT made it like more generalizable and they had like the nice UI and everything behind that, it was pretty quick that me and my co-founders were like, "There is something to be done with this tool." So that's kind of when we got to work and started on it. I would say it was actually pretty late. Like I think when you see the first response to a prompt where you're like, "There's no way it'll be able to do this," is kind of when like the light bulb goes off and you're like, "Okay, well, let's see how far we can take this and let's see what we can build around this." And that's kind of I guess our experience was similar to most users, except we just we're like, hey, let's try and build a startup around it and focus on a particular set of users and make them really happy.
It makes me smile so much, right? I'm 52 years old. I graduated high school. I had never like I actually was in graduate school when I saw my first website, right? So I graduated from graduate school in 1997, went into the workforce right in the middle of the dot-com boom. To see what this has become, now fast forward 30 years and this AI boom, very similar to what happened with the dot-com boom. You mentioned the amount of money that's coming into these companies, the support they're getting financially is mind-blowing. Of course, we just had $4 trillion that got printed in 2021, which is only helping the speed of the acceleration of the product. I remember what my question was. By the way,
Mhm.
note to everyone, don't kickbox for a living. It's not good for your brain. You forget stuff randomly. The reason I brought up Christopher Taylor and NVIDIA is yeah, I know, right? What he said was the biggest change that AI has engendered so far is in the way that we program, right? It's in the actual act of programming. So I want to ask because you guys are programming Terrakotta constantly. How different is how you're handling updates to your product today versus even what it was a year ago?
It's very different. And that's what I think like, I don't really have, I mean, co-founder Terrakotta, like, I don't really have, like, a real job right now where it's like, I mean, we work out of an apartment, like, it's we're building something awesome, the product is incredible, but, like, we don't have, like, a AI sort of, like, thesis of how that our CEO, some executive has, like, passed down. Like, we're really figuring it out as we go. And so I think, like, which is a really cool place to be in, actually, because, like, we have the freedom to use all these tools and try them without restriction, and, like, we have to be pragmatic and look at, like, how can we move things forward and use these tools to push us forward. So I think, like, in terms of product development, I'll give you 2 answers. I'll give you one, like, that's maybe more generally useful for, like, everything we do on the go-to-market side of things, because that's all gonna be similar to what an operator in commercial real estate is gonna be doing. I'll give you the technical answer. I'll start with the technical answer because it's faster. It's shifted from less of like we need to write every line of code and be like really thoughtful to like we need to review it and test it really thoroughly and like interrogate it. And I always joke that I used to write really bad code, so I feel pretty good at like reviewing the AI output because I'd be like constantly debugging my own code. So like I kind of, it's kind of about like knowing like what to look for and why it's getting hung up. I remember I was trying to get Claude to use basically like we work with a lot of shapes, obviously doing like maps and stuff. And I was trying to do something like with a circle, and I prompted it like 3 times, like, to figure it out, and it just couldn't do it, so then I, like, Googled some trigonometry stuff and, like, figured out, like, okay, this is, like, the angle that this, little slice needs to be or whatever. And it's funny because that's really what I think it is now is, like, it's a lot more review and, like, refining, but you still absolutely need a human to like think through things alongside with it. Now, for the tools that I think like are more on the operator side or like what we use from a go to market perspective, like I think MCP and like Claude connectors are like the biggest shift in the past year. So and now it's like I think they came out like last November or something like that. November 2025 is when they first announced the MCP thing and those connectors. I could have it wrong. It's moving really fast. But with that, like basically everything is connected through Claude as far as pulling data goes from different systems that we use, whether that's like GitHub or like our customer support logs, email, calendars, Calendly, CRM, all of that stuff is connected through Claude. The challenge is like managing really big data sets. So that was like one of the things I got to do a lot of as a consultant is like work with these ginormous like data sets for some of the world's most like or some of the world's largest companies. And so like I see like those problems start to take effect even for us. I mean, if you're working with a national real estate database, it's going to happen all the time because there's just tons and tons of data. So I think that's the thing that happens in commercial real estate for operators is like you can connect all these tools, they can do amazing things, but it's still like the human review of curating the data that we're going to share with the model to actually get it to be useful. That's probably where I think like the challenge or the question mark still remains. But Claude can do most of it now, honestly, and does it pretty well.
I got to rethink my life over here because I've been stuck on ChatGPT and you're saying Claude over and over and over again. You're not the first person who's been saying that. So I don't know if I got to make a switch here soon or what.
Yeah, I don't, I don't really buy that. I to a certain extent, I like to think that they're kind of like interchangeable. Maybe some of the tooling around them has gotten better for certain things. Like there's certain, like I don't know, if you ask ChatGPT to build you a graphic, like it'll do it, it'll build you like this beautiful graphic. If you ask Claude to do it, I've seen like cartoonish stuff, like doodle looks like a kid doodled it. And then like on the flip side, if you ask Claude to build you like a presentation for work, like a slide deck, it'll build you this really tight, succinct, beautiful slide deck. You have to give it design themes, otherwise it'll throw beige and like Claude fonts all over the place. But I haven't seen ChatGPT be able to do that. So it's really interesting. Like I think Claude Code, I don't know, I haven't used Codex as much, but it's kind of yeah,
I
I
I
wouldn't stress about
I
that too
started
much.
touching Codex, it's
Yeah.
mind-blowing, right? Like, just the stuff I have it doing stupid stuff, right? Like, I have 827 unread emails,
Hmm.
and I just go into Codex, and I say, "Hey, open my email, read through all of these, mark them as read, and give me a breakdown of everything that I missed."
Yeah.
And in 3 minutes, it's like what would have taken me an hour of my life to do, and it's mind-blowing to me. That begs a question. What's something that you're utilizing AI for now that you'll never do again yourself, that it's just it's filling a gap in your life and saving you time in a way that
Mm,
is helpful?
yeah. I I love this question. I think, like, okay, so there's all types of, like, content and presentation that we do at, like, Terrakotta, whether that be, like, sales collateral. So if we, like, launch the product with the brokerage, right? Like, I'm gonna have to talk to the managing director and be like, "Hey, this thing is working. This is the time save. This is the ROI on it." Another example is, like, we send updates about our product, and so that's, like, got a graphic and it's structured a certain way and it's got buttons that you can click in the email. Like, basically I have it to where, like, once I have the graphic, I can just, like, drop in the graphic and Claude will, like, figure it out and spin up the email to, like, build the update. Like, on the example where I'm sharing, like, sales collateral, or, like, it's really, like, customer success collateral, but I have it connected to, like, all of our user analytics tools, and so I can just give it, like, I drop in a domain and, like, it spins up this really nice report for, like, how things are going there. So I think there's that. I'm trying to think of some other examples, like, on the more technical side. Like, a really simple example that I see all of our, the people on our dev team do is, like, when they spin up their local environment to, like, build new features, they all have, like, these commands that they've used Claude to, like, build these builds, essentially, of, like, putting the project together so that they can, like, launch our product from their own computer. And it's cool because, like, they all do it slightly different, and they all have their own preferences and set of tools that they like, but, like, the end result is the same. And I think that's the other cool thing is, like, when you look at the output that we've generated using Claude, or, like, these things that we've automated, like, you can still tell, like, who did it, even though they're using Claude, because, like, we all work a certain way, think a certain way, want information laid out a certain way. So I think it actually, like, has allowed us to, like, automate things and, like, check off whole sort of operational things. There's a ton of other things that I'd like to go and do internally, but yeah, those are some of the ones that come to mind.
I have a bunch more questions and I want to get a little philosophical. We're going to take a quick 30-second break to hear from our sponsors. We'll be back with Kusiima Boswell in a second. Storage Unlocked is brought to you by PB Brown. Over $1 billion in ground-up construction delivered, from single-story to Manhattan high-rise, institutional grade, engineered for performance, and designed to stand out. Great storage catches the consumer's eye, drives traffic, and helps lease-up happen faster. From Manhattan to Miami, California to Hawaii, PB Brown is the GC to trust for your multi-million-dollar storage development. All right. I want to shift a little bit into the kind of the philosophical side of this conversation, right? It's happening so fast. And I just read something this morning. I can't remember, but it was like it was clearly an attempt to get some clicks of, like, when does AI get conscious? It's someone who's a big Instagram person, and I know they're just trying to get people to tune into their thing, but it becomes a question because the early scare was everyone's going to lose their job. I tend to think it's going to be the opposite of that. Personally, I think that it's going to create a bunch of jobs, certainly always has anytime there's been a big technological innovation in our world, whether it was like fire, whether it was like in the Industrial Revolution. Certainly, I was alive for the beginning of the internet and the effect that that had. How do you see AI from a philosophical standpoint? I know this is something that you're somebody who is very conscientious. You're a person that thinks about other people. I've had a chance to talk to you a bunch. How do you see AI overall affecting people on a, whether it's their work, whether it's their daily life? How do you see this happening in the coming years?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. It's fun to talk about this question too, so thanks for asking it. The So, like, I guess philosophically, the way that I think about this whole, like, replacing jobs and jobs being at risk thing is, like, by and large, I mean, I have, like, an econ degree. That's, like, the main thing that I studied when I was at Penn. It's what you get if you go through the business school. But I wrote, like, this LinkedIn post about, and I think I probably overcomplicated it, but that there's this function that basically maps out productivity to, like, capital, labor, and technology as, like, the three things that you multiply for that, and like, that's what determines productivity. Like, and no, like, I mean, these are economic models, so they're meant to mock or mimic reality. It's not actually what happens, but like if you're trying to maximize productivity, like, you don't turn any of those dials down. Like, labor is somewhat fixed, like, replacement rate is whatever, 2%, and then, like, capital, like, different players or different countries, different economies are gonna have, like, access to different capital, but, like, technology only improves things. It's not like you swap it in for one of the other variables in that equation that maps out productivity, and, like, we're in the US, that this is kinda what we do. Like, we make things, we build things, we create things. And so I just think that, like, that's gonna be the effect, is like more brilliant results, more productivity, more output, like wider diversity of things, people having more options to work on different things that they couldn't before, is what I think is gonna happen. Like, obviously, the thing that you always hear these executives say in these kind of like drab like news interviews is like, it's about reskilling, and like there may be some junior level jobs that are, and to some extent maybe that's true, but I mean, the junior people in these organizations are almost always the people that understand how to use these tools the best. So there's kind of some irony in that statement. So we'll see how things play out. I think largely like it's net gonna be something that people adopt, and that like, folks kind of just like it'll get ushered into how we work, and there will just be better outcomes without it actually like having a ton of harm on people. I think the bigger risk of harm is actually not doing a good job taking care of like natural resources in our planet, and like being conscientious about like the hard like physical or like earth or like requirements that these technologies need to run. So there's that. And then I think, like at a micro level, what this means for me, or like what this means for us philosophically, is like I'm stoked. I'm stoked about what the future holds. One of our like founding engineers was describing like building products. He's like, it's going to be less like you're an engineer, more like a painter or an artist, where it's like truly about like taste and like what feels right, and like what actually is the pain point that is like most relevant. How does that get solved? Like my favorite example of this is this AI note taking thing. So you had like all these like Fireflies and Otter AI and Read AI, and like and then there's this player called Granola, and Granola is growing like crazy fast. And the thing that Granola does is it listens to your computer audio instead of having these annoying bots that join every meeting. And like that one design change is like actually the unlock. And that's more of like an artistic or design choice as opposed to it being like some sort of technological thing. So I think that stories like that are.
I want to dig into one thing you said that I found fascinating, right? If we create more money, right, the resources part of that equation you talked about with
Yeah.
money and people and technology, we would create more money. We create the problem of inflation. We're going through it right now. I talked earlier about $4 trillion that got created in 2020, 2021 because of COVID, and we're feeling the pain of that. More people, you talked about the earth and the resource, that we got one planet. Eventually Elon's going to take us
Yeah.
to Mars, but
We'll
that's
see.
a little bit down the road. Maybe not as far as we think with the speed
Yeah.
of innovation that we're getting. The point I'm trying to get to is population growth, even though it's been astronomical in the last 126 years, and the growth of money, capital to fuel it's not growing even a percentage as fast as what we're seeing the technological innovation. And to your point, and I always think this way, right? Good people are going to do good with it. Bad people are going to do bad with it. That's just going to
Yeah.
be the reality of any technological innovation. I'm one of those people. I think it's pretty similar to you. I feel like we're sort of aligned in this, that there are a lot of good people out there, and a
Yeah.
lot of good people that are like yourself, that are at the forefront of what's going on in the world of AI. I don't think we've got, Dr. Evil out there putting his finger on his lips and trying to figure out how to curse us all with this
Yeah.
technology. Listen, hard to believe it's been more than a half hour already. I want to honor your time, and as always, honor the folks that watch. Cannot thank you enough for taking. I know how busy you are. I didn't even get to dig into the life of a founder of a company, which I know you're living daily, shacked up with your friends and building this company. Continued success. Looking forward to seeing the journey and where you end up. Have so much respect for what you've done, and thanks for taking the time to come and talk to me about this stuff.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on and for all the thoughtful questions. That was like highlight of my week. Super fun conversation.
Appreciate you so much, Kusiima. That's it for this week's edition of Storage Unlocked. One more time, I want to give a shout out to our friends at PB Brown General Contractors. I am Thaddeus Campbell, Director of Business Development at S3 Partners. We are here for any of your ground up development needs. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. We will be back with another edition of Storage Unlocked next week.